Hey, it's Amy Shaw here. Today is the 45th return of the sun for me, so yeah, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. I don't know if I feel 45. Actually, I feel maybe 90. But I had a homeless man last night asking me for money, and he told me that I didn't look 45. So I think he was just trying to get more money from me, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, happy birthday to me. So I wanted to make a video today. In the last video, I talked about Indra's net and how we're all connected and where I get my inspiration to make my videos. So today's no different. Today my inspiration for this topic came from somebody that I spoke to last week, maybe the week before, about animal spirits. So as we were talking, it's just a common thing that comes up actually in working with people, and I thought, wow, that would really actually make a very good topic for a video. Let me digress for just one moment to say that I often do, especially when I'm in my library, have music playing in the background. Part of the reason I do that is because I do live in the Austin, Texas area, and it's very, very busy. The street behind me is a main street, and so I get a lot of traffic. And there's a lot of construction going on as well. So they're big, heavy, rock trucks and stuff that go barreling by, and they're really loud. So just basically on the other side of this wall behind me is the major road. So I kind of try to drown out the sound a little bit with the music. Sometimes the volume level on that gets a little bit off. I think that has more to do with me being irritated by the traffic than anything else. But so anyway, if you hear music in the background, that's usually what's going on with that. Yeah, I was just trying to drown out the external noises. So anyway, today I want to talk about spirit animal guides. And it's the staple of shamanic practice. It's part of shamanic work is to build, basically an army of spirit allies. Both upper and lower world allies. Today I'm just going to talk about mainly the lower world allies, which are the spirit animals. So I brought with me my Animal Spirit deck by Kim Kranz. I love her work. I also have another one of her tarot decks. I love it. I have probably 3 or actually 4, I believe, animal spirit decks. This by far is my favorite. She does all the artwork for the deck. It's a beautiful, beautiful deck. Now, I don't actually use this deck with other people, very, very rarely. I don't use a lot of decks actually with other people. I do a lot of self-readings with them. Even though people say that you shouldn't do that, I don't really care what they say. I do what I want to do, and for me, I do a lot of self-readings with my tarot decks. Definitely divination is a big part of shamanic practice. I tend to not use cards so much for a couple different reasons. One of them being that a lot of people use cards, is very common. And another because I think that the cards themselves sort of hold this energy and they mean different things to different people. So for example, if I see elk, it might embody something specific to me, or I might read in Kim's book and what she says about it, and then, get a view about elk from that. That may not actually be an accurate thing. And then likewise, cosmic egg but snake. If I was to pull this card, this definitely means something to me. I have an intimate connection with snake medicine, and so I'm instantly going to have all the thoughts and feelings that come from that, and my personal experience with that, and my interpretation of it. Whereas if I'm working with somebody who's deathly afraid of snakes, maybe they come from a Christian background, and so they view the snake as the serpent or Satan or evil in some kind of way, some sort of malevolent intent, they're going to instantly have a feeling about this. And so that's why I tend to not use the cards, because I do think that there is some subjectivity in it, and that the actual visualization of the card itself can influence the people that you're doing the reading for, in a sort of way that you don't really intend. So I am just going to pull a card out of here though, just to illustrate my point in talking about the spirit animal guides. And let's grab right from the middle and see what that one is. Moth. All right, moth. Moth. So this is a beautiful card, as you can see, but at the end of the day, it's just a card. It's just a card with sort of a projected, representation of something in our 3D beautiful planet that we live on here on this card that an artist created. But it is just a card. That's it, a card. Now, if I'm going to actually look up the card and its meaning in the book that accompanies this deck, Kim has this listed in the air suit of the deck, and moth. Impulsive, hasty, wishful. The moth is sure that grass is greener on the other side. Moth energy is at play when we're attracted to easy solutions or anything shiny and new. This can lead to unfinished projects, disappointment, or burnout. It's helpful to remind moth personalities that life is complex. No matter the illusion, no one is exempt from the trials and tribulations of this great journey. Practice seeing life as an infinite mystery rather than wishing it was easier or different. Okay, that's a really good card. But my point of it is that's her interpretation of moth. That's her experience of moth. She's, divulged that to us in this book. And that definitely has its place. It's useful. But it's not how I personally choose to work with the animal spirits. This is a different sort of method of getting information, exploring self, understanding oneself in relation to the environment and that type of thing. So once again, I want to say, while it is a valid thing, and I don't criticize people that use cards, obviously, I have a whole deck, and this is one of many, many decks that I do have. So I'm not criticizing people that choose to use tarot decks or to do divination in that manner. I'm just saying for myself, it's not typically how I operate with people when I do divination, and it's typically absolutely not how I work with the animal spirits. And again, I'm going to explain to you why. So again, this is just a hollow, it's a card. It's a flat card. It's just a projected image. But let's just say that, I'm in shamanic consciousness and moth comes to me personally and I see it. What a lot of people are tempted to do when this happens to them is run to a book and look it up and oh, I saw moth. This is what it means. In actuality, that really robs you of your experience of what the animal ally is actually trying to teach you. It's really similar to like opening up a newspaper and reading the daily horoscope and saying, okay, so today's my birthday, I'm a Sagittarius, so I'm going to look up Sagittarius and I'm going to read the daily horoscope, and it's telling me this is the kind of day I have, and this kind of day is going to apply to the millions of other Sagittariuses in the world. It's a sort of cookie cutter approach that's feeding to us what we're supposed to think or believe about ourselves and the world around us. Instead of just being in that world and in that experience and experiencing it itself. And so the animal allies, when they come to us, it's because they want to be in relationship with us. They don't want us to project onto them this sort of hollow experience of a relationship, but to be in relationship. So let me stop for a moment and briefly just talk about my relationship to animals, my experience with animals. Growing up as a child, my mom owned 2 different pet stores at 2 different phases in my life. So those experiences were very, very different. The first one was when she was married to my second stepdad. The second one when she was single. So these were different sort of eras in my life that represent different phases and just different aspects. That brings up a lot of different memories. But just sticking to the idea of growing up in a pet store 2 different times, we had pet stores. The first pet store that we had, we carried every type of animal imaginable. Rabbits, ferrets, puppies, kittens, snakes, tarantulas, all sorts of exotic reptiles, exotic birds. We had a whole separate room just full of fish aquariums, and it was so cool. It was really dark. There was like no lights in there. And so the fish tanks lined the walls, and so the lights in the fish tanks like really lit up, made the fish pop. You could really see them really well. And as a child, I remember just going around, to the different fish tanks and just watching and being so fascinated. And we had all kinds. We had saltwater tropical fish. We had this puffer fish. I thought that was so cool. And lionfish. And, I could pretty much identify every type of fish when I was a kid. And in the middle of that room, my mom had this large fish tank. She actually had I think it was about a 150-gallon tank. She actually had a fish in there that was a flesh-eating. It was not a piranha, but it was in the piranha family. and she would stick her hand down into the water and feed it out of her hand. So that's, kind of how I grew up around animals and understanding animals. I would help my mom clean out the tanks. Sometimes she would, ask me to go back into the freezer and get the little pinkies, which, we call them pinkies, but they're basically newborn mice. They're real tiny and they're pink and they have no hair on them. When the mice would give birth, unfortunately, we would, put the little babies in a bag and stick them in the freezer, and that was the snake food. So sometimes I would have to go get the little pinkies and pull them out and put them in the tank for the snakes to have their food, or crickets. So sometimes I would do that. Sometimes I would clean out the kitten cages or the dog cages. After school I would come to the pet store and give the puppies a walk, and so I that was a big part of my life. I spent a lot of time in the pet stores and had been around pets. Growing up, I had various pets. In my adult life, I've had various pets. We've had a chinchilla, we've had a chameleon, of course we've had lots of dogs, lots of cats. Right now we have 3 dogs. 2 of our dogs are kill shelter rescues. One is a lab and the other one is a long-haired chihuahua. We got them both on the same day. And then we inherited my oldest son's dog, was a pit bull. So we have 3 dogs, 3 different kind of sizes. They definitely have 3 different personalities. And so, having been a pet owner most of my life, I've had rabbits as well, many rabbits. Turtles, we had a turtle when I was a child. So having, been around pets most of my life, having interacted with pets, I understand that they each have their own personality. So when I say to you, like, what are the characteristics of a dog? People will likely say, well, dogs are loyal companions. Dogs love unconditionally. Dogs are, they seek to please people. Dogs are very joyous. Dogs live in the moment. And so these are all kind of characteristics, these archetypal characteristics that we could say generally are universal about all dogs. So when I say a dog animal spirit guide and I ask you to connect to what that means, these are probably the things that you're going to get coming through about, the archetype of the dog. But along with that comes a certain idea about maybe a dog that you've had and your unique relationship with that dog. So every animal has a spirit in the same way every person has a spirit. No 2 people are alike, no 2 animals are alike. Even within species, I could take 2 labs that look identical and put them side by side, and their behaviors are going to be completely different because they've been shaped by their own experiences, and their environment also feeds in, and so certainly the 3 dogs I have would be totally different if they weren't in the pack that they're in. So all these things really interplay to create the spirit, the personality of each animal. Well, it really is no different in a sense in the wild. I mean, maybe there's less sort of interaction with the environment because they're in a more natural environment. But the truth of it is, no 2 bears are going to be exactly alike. No 2 tigers, no 2 lions are going to be exactly alike. Each animal has its own unique imprinting, its own genetic imprinting, and all these things that work together to create the personality and the spirit of each animal. And so what I really want to impress upon you is that when the animal spirits come to us, they come to us as unique sovereign spirits. They don't come to us as the archetype. So if we approach them as the archetype in this sort of generic way of projecting everything that we know about that species of that thing onto them, we're not really allowing ourselves to be in personal relationship with them. And they come to us because they want to teach us not only about their archetypal nature and their place in nature, in the giant web that we're all a part of, but also about their individual personality. So a couple weeks ago, someone came to me. We had this conversation. She was sent by another shaman. We were talking about animal spirit guides, and she had a situation where she was meditating, like in a contemplative, mind-clearing meditative space. And as she was meditating, she fell into shamanic consciousness unintentionally. I mean, she wasn't intentionally trying to get into shamanic consciousness, but she fell into shamanic consciousness. And then she had a visitation from an animal spirit. She was a little bit frightened of it because this particular animal spirit is something that she is afraid of in the material realm. And so it evoked a lot of feelings, a little bit of hesitation. and uncertainty on how to approach the experience of what happened to her. So we have this conversation, and I encouraged her, as I do everyone that I talk to about the animal spirit guides, to lean into it, you know, not to shrink away from it, not to be afraid of it, but actually to lean into it. You know, in the spiritual realm, this animal is not the same thing as in the material realm. It really isn't going to hurt you. It's coming to you because it wants to interact with you and be in relationship with you. It wants to teach you things. And so you lean into it. And I encouraged her even to merge with her animal. Now, emerging is an interesting thing. It is sort of like shape-shifting, but it's not entirely like shape-shifting, because you're not actually altering your physical body, your physical manifestation in any way. But what you're doing is you're taking your shamanic consciousness out of your physical body in this space and time, and you're actually shifting consciousness and becoming or merging with the animal, so that you are looking through its eyes and feeling through its body and allowing it to teach and to show you. A lot of traditions, shamanic traditions, actually do animal spirit mergings. The Native Americans definitely. I'm sure that you've seen, you know, when they do their spirit dances, they dance around the fire. You know, they're dressed like eagle, or they're dressed like buffalo. I mean, if you just Google like eagle dancer or buffalo dancer, you'll see, you know, Native Americans in their full regalia, and they're wearing costumery that represents that animal. You know, and again, this is more than just an archetype of their understanding, but they're actually embodying a particular spirit of a particular animal. And as they dance it, that is a form of merging. They're feeling into that energy of it as they're dancing around the fire in a shamanic sort of consciousness or altered state. So, you know, definitely that's one way of dancing your spirit animal, to feel it and to be free with it. But you can certainly do that, you know, just in shamanic consciousness in general, you know, sitting in a chair, laying down, however, you know, you want to experience that. But that's what merging is about. The important thing about merging, though, is to, you know, eventually come back into your body and be in your consciousness and disconnect from your spirit animal. I mean, obviously, the reason that you want to do that is because, you know, it can cloud your mind, and if you don't completely disconnect and you stay merged with the animal, you know, it can cause actual, you know, confusion and, you know, cognitive decline, inability to concentrate. You know, it can really affect your ability to be in normal consciousness and to adult. So it's always important, if you're going to experiment with merging, to make sure that you disconnect and come fully back into your body. But even in that disconnection, it's not like you're saying to your spirit guide, okay, that's it, go away. They're always around you. And so one of the things, you know, that shamans often do is embody the animals also in their space, you know, whether they're making sacred tools to use in ceremony, and they're using, you know, that's why you see a lot of Native Americans, they use the animal skins to, you know, adorn their ceremonial objects, you know, and it's a way that they bring that energy in. Let me talk really quick about just animistic cultures and how they are different from our material, rational culture. In animistic cultures, you know, people, not just shamans, all the people in the tribe, believe that objects, even such as this book, each carry a spirit with them or represent the spirit of the thing. So to them, all things are living things. And so a lot of times, as with the Native Americans, but certainly even the South American shamans, you know, you'll see them with these really gnarly jaguar teeth necklaces. The shamans wear their power in their costumery, and because for them, they're actually those teeth represent actually the literal power of the jaguar. So when they put that on, you know, they feel like that is their power. They're empowering themselves. Their power comes much more external to them than our Western rational materialism. We're very self-empowered, and so we understand from the center of self outward rather than the other way around. So for Western shamans, we tend to get our power from in and external. So we don't necessarily need to wear a bunch of, you know, jaguar teeth around our neck to be in our power. And thank God for that, right? Because it actually, if you think about it, the shamanic path is not necessarily environmentally politically correct. But I would encourage you, if you're working with your animal spirits, to do that, to embody that in your environment. So how you would honor your relationships with those spirits is, by having totems in your altar spaces, by using their furs and your sacred instruments that you're using for ceremony and that type of thing, or even just an effigy, having imagery, which is where the cards do help, and they do come into play. But the point of it is that you should be having a individual and unique relationship, with the spirits, not just reading about them in a book, or looking at them on a card, but actually interacting and merging with them and developing, a large camaraderie of animal spirit allies, because that's why they really truly visit us. They want us to be in personal relationship with them and to teach them, not for other people to tell us, oh, this is what this means. I'll give you an example of that. I had a power animal retrieval once, and actually it was a community retrieval. So several people did the retrieval, and multiple people told me that they retrieved turtle for me, which was interesting. Turtle is not something that I had worked with in the spiritual realm, and I was overhearing some conversation that was happening a little bit later, and some people were saying, oh, well, the cool thing about turtle is that it carries its house on its back. So home is everywhere it is. It literally carries its home with it. And that kind of stuck with me. When they retrieved spirit, and when they retrieved the turtle spirit for me, I journeyed into turtle, and I said, show me, show me what you want to teach me. And I asked Turtle, is it true that you carry your home on your back? And Turtle said, no, that's not true. So what Turtle did was it took me through its eyes. So I merged with her. And what she did was she showed me that her home is actually in water. She prefers water, although she will come up and be on land because she likes to feel the sun on her body. So her home is not in her shell any more than our home is in our skin. A turtle shell is basically like a turtle skin. It's not literally its home. So what Turtle did was she took me very deep down to the darkest depths. Very dark, very cold. She was down there for a good while. And we just sat and I observed and I felt into that space. And then she said, okay, I'm done. And she came very gracefully and slowly back up to the surface, just swimming very gracefully, and, got to a rock, climbed up on the rock, perched herself on, and then sunned herself for a little while as she breathed in the air. And then back down again. And so actually what Turtle taught me was not that she carries her home on her back and so she's so amazing, and in other words, I'm supposed to assume that home is wherever I am. No, that wasn't Turtle's message for me. What Turtle's message for me was that she is capable of going to the deepest, darkest depths and being comfortable there, and very gracefully making the transition back up into the light, into the warmth, into the sun, and being completely content and graceful there as well. So for me, what I learned from Turtle was that she's a good ally to use during transitions between darkness and light, and the gracefulness that's required. So that is how we work with our animal spirits, by merging with them, allowing them to work with us individually and to teach us. I'm not reading it out of a book, not reading it out of a card, but experiencing them firsthand and calling upon them as allies. A lot of my shamanic work, I do use my spirit allies, and because I've had personal relationships with them, I know how they work, I know how they operate, I know what their strengths are, I know the type of work that they prefer to do. So the more I develop that language and understanding, the easier it is for me to call upon those specific animal spirits, for particular situations where I know that they will be useful and that they want to be useful. So another thing I want to say really quick about that is that I hadn't intended on talking about any other type of spirit ally but the animal allies, but I do just want to say briefly that, I know that there's a lot of magicians and shamans who will invoke or align themselves with demonic entities. And so a lot of people, I've heard them say that it's not right, or it's unfair, or it's showing favoritism, or what have you, to show preference for certain types of spirits and entities, and to exclude others in our work. That basically we should be open to all. And I just want to say that personally is not my path. I think that we really run into very sketchy territory of sorcery when we start aligning ourselves with demonic entities. And the reason why is that demonic entities are malevolent. They have malevolent intent. They're sadistic, they're masochistic, they're very arrogant. They get pleasure out of seeing pain and suffering in other people. And so while the allies, animal allies, help me and do healing work, they actually can be used, and it's no coincidence that as I'm actually talking about this, here's the dragon card, they actually can and do also want to be used, in protective and defensive work. Okay, my personal shamanic stance is I'm much more Aikido-minded in my spiritual warfare. And what I mean by that is I try to come at it from a place of do no harm. I'm like everybody else. I'm human. I fail. I'm not perfect. I'm still working through ego inflations and shadow work and all that stuff, which I'm going to continue to do the rest of my life. Interesting that black egg comes up as I'm talking about that. So that's just that's part of the shamanic path, is to continue to do that work of clearing and working through and understanding self. And I am still doing that. But my basic stance in spiritual warfare is to do no harm. So I take much more of an Aikido approach to it. I would much rather use somebody's own energy to catapult them further forward in the direction that they're trying to go, rather than meet them with this kind of, headbutting resistance. Because that is energy depleting, and it really doesn't get anybody anywhere. And so coming at it from an Aikido standpoint, I tend to view spiritual warfare very much in that lens. In other words, I don't make demons my allies. I don't work with demons. And I think that we run the risk of falling into sorcery, because what demons want to do is sort of like hoard over. They want to have the authority over. They're very arrogant. They want to, assert over. I tend to want to come under and lift up, instead of assert over and squash down. It's tricky when you're dealing head on with demons, and I know the temptation is to want to invoke or align yourself with other demons so that the demons and the demons can fight each other. But I have found actually that my spirit guides are quite effective, and it's shocking how some of them assert their authority in ways that are very protective without being unnecessarily injurious. And so what I appreciate about the benevolent allies is that being benevolent doesn't necessarily mean that you're weak. I've definitely seen some stuff. And that's another thing I want to talk about. That's another thing I want to talk about really quick, is that if you're doing this kind of work and you're journeying, you're in shamanic consciousness, you're interacting and developing alliances with the spirit animals, inevitably there's going to come moments where you're going to see some crazy stuff. Whether that's animals dismembering you or other people, or urinating on you or other people, or just crazy stuff. I've seen some crazy stuff, and it's normal. And I remember when this first happened to me, I was like, whoa, what's going on? Something's wrong with me, right? Oh, my subconscious, my unconscious mind, something's wrong. I'm projecting this crazy stuff. In reality, that's just a normal part of the process. Every shaman has survived many, many, many dismemberments, and that's okay. Don't be afraid of it. Just lean into it, observe it, allow them to teach you, and understand that they really are coming from a benevolent place. They're not, in malevolence, getting pleasure out of seeing you hurt or trying to hurt you. They're actually trying to help you, to strengthen you, and to be your allies. So again, I just want to reiterate that as I'm showing these cards one by one, these are just cards, and they are going to invoke thoughts, feelings as I hold them up and you look at them, but they're not actually having true spiritual interactions in the spiritual realm. You're not actually developing allies with these guys as I'm holding it up. You're just having thoughts and feelings about them, and that's okay. Thoughts and feelings are okay. But they really want to be your friend. They really want you to understand them, to become them, to use them in ways to protect you, to strengthen you, empower you, encourage you, and all those things. So again, I'm not criticizing anybody that uses any type of cards or any type of book to understand the animals, because that's definitely a path. As I said, I have many tarot decks myself. I tend to not use them so much with people, but if I'm going to be out in public and talking with people in any kind of way, and I want to use cards in some kind of, way to mediate or bridge with people, I tend to use my Shamanic healing deck. I love this deck. It's not like a traditional tarot deck. It doesn't have suits in that way. They're more kind of like coaching cards, I would say. So I would pull one. See, this one is home. Just says home. It's a beautiful card. I think these are much more emotionally attuned. Burden. And so, yeah, these are the type of cards that I prefer to use if I'm, working with people in a public setting. Maybe I'll just invite them, if they feel up to it, to draw a card and see what that kind of invokes in them. Self-love. Yeah, so I use them actually less for divination and more for invoking psychic development. They're great conversation starters, new beginnings. So beautiful cards. Yep. So I have several decks. Like I said, I'm not opposed to using them, and I'm not trying to down anybody that does. I'm just saying, as I'm encouraging people to work with their spirit animal allies to develop shamanic consciousness, I don't necessarily encourage the use of cards, of drawing cards, or of running to a book to interpret what the experience is like. Because really, if you're having to run to a book to interpret your experience, then you're not really experiencing it, right? You're not really leaning in and experiencing what you're intended to experience in it. I think that, in ordinary consciousness, people struggle with this the most because, they'll be out and about and they'll see something. Yesterday, actually, as I was driving around, I saw a dead possum, intact, completely intact. And a giant vulture was standing on top of the possum trying to, rip into its skin. I'm sensitive to that. I'm always aware of the messages that are coming through me. The various oracles and how they're expressing themselves in my natural environment, for me to be at that place at that time to see that. But I rather than run home and look up possum and look up vulture to tell me what that actually means, I felt into that moment. I just took those couple of seconds of observing that as I was driving by, and him just ripping that off, and that possum just basically playing possum, but really being dead. I just took a moment to feel into what that felt like and allowed my mind to wander into that. I feel the lessons that I got from that are far more profound than any lessons I can get from reading a book to tell me what to think or feel about that experience and what its unique message was for me. So it's part of how we stay open. And again, I'm not criticizing. I think that books have their place, and there's a way to open a book and read the book and also be in an open space, if that's your thing. I just tend to not rely on that as much when I'm dealing with the sidewalk oracles that are coming through to me on a daily basis. Those, you know, unique messages from spirit that are coming specifically to me. I tend to not want to open a book and have that defined for me. However, you know, I was a student under Robert Moss for 18 months, and so he taught me a whole lot about synchronicity and sidewalk oracles, and I actually have his sidewalk oracles book that I read, and it's sitting right in front of me right now. I'm looking at the title of it. He's a really interesting man, and that's one of the things that he taught us how to do, was what he called bibliomancy. He is a great diviner. He uses everything in his environment to divine, and he's amazing that way. And that's one of the skills that he taught us how to do. Just open a book at any random page and divine out of it. Open your journal on a random page and to divine out of it. And so that is a legitimate thing. It's a legitimate path, bibliomancy. So I'm not opposed to using books or using cards or using anything for divination, but I just tend to not approach it from that way. So anyway, thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you watching my videos, and as always, if you have questions or comments, you're free to leave them down below, and I have a lot of different ways that you can get a hold of me on social medias and whatnot if you're trying to reach out to me. I love you guys so much. Let me just pull a random card for all of us today from my Shamanic Healing deck and see what this card I can leave you with is for the day. Perception. Perception. Wow, the yin and the yang. That's awesome. All right, have a great day.